Okay, so I'm Carrie Stengel. I'm the host of today's webinar, Green and Profitable Harnessing the Marketing Advantages of Going Green, and I'm also the founder of Ventureneer, and I'm delighted to have Shel Horowitz with me. This is a topic that is near and dear to Ventureneer's heart, and that is really marketing your social responsibility and using that to attract your kinds of customers and prospects. So Shel Horowitz's credentials: he's a green and ethical marketing consultant and copywriter. He's written Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green. He is also a columnist, and let's see, I'm sorry, the cut and paste didn't come in so clearly.
Sorry.
He does there's a lot of junk characters in here. So actually, I'm going to show everything that I missed from your bio. If you wouldn't mind talking about the types of consulting that you do, and maybe a little bit about the consulting you do even in around authoring and publishing.
Sure. Well, I consult, first of all, with companies that want to either reach the green market or bring a green product or service to market, which there are two different audiences, the green and the non-green, and you market to them differently. I help with both. A lot of my client portfolio is actually authors and publishers who want to get their books noticed in a universe where 1 million books a year are coming out just in the United States, and also actually walking them through the process of becoming published authors, picking out the right path to publish, and then going through the necessary steps to either land a good publishing deal or to become your own publisher. So that's in a nutshell the very quick version of the consulting I do. I'm also an international speaker and an internationally syndicated columnist. I have a column every month called Green and Profitable, where I talk about how to be green and profitable. And of course, I've written 8 books. The most recent is Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green, which has been an Amazon category bestseller for at least 22 of the 24 months since it came out, and which has also won some awards. And it's a really nice platform to have because people take you much more seriously when you're the author of an award-winning book. So that's the short version. And I think we should just plunge ahead then and go.
Terrific. So I'm just going to pause here and remind everybody that we'll be distributing a link to the recording and a copy of the slides, and we'll also be periodically stopping to allow people to ask questions, and they can do that in the lower right-hand corner in the chat box.
Great. Yeah, so the first company I'm going to talk about is one called Markel, and I find them a fascinating case study because they were really, really a pioneer in moving toward recycled paper as their main raw ingredient. This is a household paper products company: toilet paper, napkins, paper towels, tissues. And what you're looking at here is a slide of their packaging in 1965 and their packaging in 2009. They were founded in the 30s, and they switched to recycled paper all the way back in, believe it or not, 1950, 1950, which was several years before I was even born. And back then, it was simply a matter of resources. In the post-World War II era, it was kind of hard to get virgin paper. So they thought, well, gee, we're located 10 miles from Manhattan. Maybe we could make this stuff out of other people's old mail. So I had certainly never heard the term recycled until about the 1970s, I think. But these people were doing it in 1950. But they didn't tell anybody. If you look at that upper picture there from 1965, you won't see a word about recycled anywhere on the package. Now, this company actually went bankrupt in 2006, and then they brought in a turnaround team, and the turnaround team kind of looked around and said, hey, we are sitting on this huge asset. We've been doing recycled paper longer than just about anybody else, and now there is a big green market here. Maybe in the 1950s it was not considered cool to make toilet paper out of other people's junk mail, there might have been a certain ew factor. But that's no longer true. Now there are a lot of people who will be very glad to support this thing. So they really built the recovery from bankruptcy on a growing and growing attention to this role that they've had of saving a lot of trees by using recycled paper over a very, very long period of time. So here's a close-up again of the 1965 packaging, front and back. Memory lane here. We used this stuff when I was a kid. Now, by the mid-2000s, they're finally waking up and at least announcing on the label, in the leaf there on the upper left, that they are a recycled product. I do wonder how much more paper they would have sold to people like me as I became aware in the early 70s of environmental issues. The 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s, I would have certainly been a steady customer if I had known that this was a reasonably priced, fully recycled paper that I could be using. But they didn't tell anybody. So they didn't get the benefit of that. Here's the back of that same package. It's there. It's not all that noticeable. 100% total recycled content, 30% minimum post-consumer. But, of course, you would have had to take this package down off the shelf to see that in the supermarket. 2008, it's a little bit greener. They've got the pine trees going on in the right-hand side, and they've moved the paper from paper thing much more prominently to the front of the label. And the recycling logo is there just kind of at the edge of the picture on the bottom right. And here's a close-up. And you notice also it says premium recycled right under their brand name on the front. Now, 2009, they introduced this campaign called Small Steps, and they rebranded the whole consumer line. They went with a fall foliage motif, and you see that huge tree in the middle that says Save 1 Million Trees. I think the next slide, yeah, there we go. And underneath that, it says 100% premium recycled paper. And then there's some additional benefit points underneath strong absorbent. You can see it says whitened without chlorine bleaching, which is a huge thing for environmentalists. And then some other stuff, no dye or fragrance. They gave up on the blues and the yellows that they had in the 60s. And then the following year, they really went, you cannot miss it. I mean, they're in bigger print than their own brand logo. You see 100% premium recycled, the second biggest thing on the whole label. Above that, a recycling label with a tree in it. You can save 1 million trees. And then this cool thing at the bottom right that you'll see a little more closely. Oh, I don't have that slide, sorry. Okay, environmental facts. Down at the bottom, it's too small for you to really see it, but basically they're looking at the food nutrition labels as a model here, except the food labels are compulsory, and they did this voluntarily as a marketing gimmick. They've done some kind of interesting, crazy stuff like declaring themselves the official sponsor of fall foliage and doing a nice little photo contest last year around that theme. And they have a sense of humor and play about it, and I think the environmental facts are part of that. I'll have to figure out why the slide that shows them close-up isn't there. So what happened? Okay, remember this company was bankrupt in 2006. December 2009, which is only 8 months after introducing this Small Steps branding, they were the #1 recycled paper brand in the country. Nice turnaround. So what can you learn from this case study? Well, first of all, if you're green, don't keep it a secret. Look for the higher purpose. Saving 1 million trees is something that will motivate people in a way that buy my toilet paper will not. If you have a price advantage and you're a green product, that gives you huge advantage, which Markel did. If you compare their pricing to, say, 7th generation, it's amazingly cheaper. And that they respect consumers. They speak to the need of consumers to be informed and the ease with which we can be informed now. We have, at any point, we are just clicks away from getting more than enough information about pretty much anything we ever want to know. And that is something that is different in the last 15 years than it was before. So we as marketers need to tap into that. And we need to educate our consumers and provide them with means of educating themselves so that they come to us as the natural choice as opposed to trying to shove a marketing message down their throats. So those are some lessons from Markel, and they point to what I consider an absolutely fundamental principle, which is that when you combine a message of self-interest, in this case, a high-quality product at a low price, with a message of global interest, global purpose, such as saving 1 million trees, you have a winner. And that when you make going green the economical alternative, you're hitting both of those things and you will be successful. Another case study, I think probably every person in the USA on this call will know this brand, Ben & Jerry's. Now, here you have a situation where there are basically only 2 players in the super premium ice cream space. There are hundreds of companies making super premium ice cream, but only 2 of them have any kind of real market share. Both of them in the 40 to 45% range. So 80 to 90% of the ice cream market for the high end is with just these 2 brands. One of them is cold corporate Haagen-Dazs. You might call them the Exxon of super premium ice cream. Owned for many, many decades by a large conglomerate, doing branding that is not really, how shall I say this? They make it sound like their ice cream is made in Europe, and it's not. It's made in the Northeast United States. But they have a lot of marketing muscle and a lot of corporate power behind them, and they've done very well in the space, and they make a decent ice cream. And then you've got this funky little company started by 2 hippies in a garage in Burlington, Vermont. How is it possible that this little upstart Ben & Jerry's can actually compete head-to-head with Haagen-Dazs? I am going to submit that the reason is because from the very beginning, these guys had a social and environmental conscience, incorporated that into their marketing, into their product development, into every aspect of the company, and basically made it the clear choice of anybody who shared their values. Would you buy this cold corporate ice cream that does nothing to make the world better, or would you buy this funky little brand that's got fun-to-read packaging and has early commitment to fair trade and hires people that would be perhaps having a hard time finding a job and generally walking their talk? It's a no-brainer. And in their case, it is brought them enormous market share. When you compare the market share with like a Harold's or an Emack and Bolio's, which sells some tiny, tiny fraction, I think it's because all this stuff is right there. I can't prove that. Nobody's ever done a real study on why do people buy Ben & Jerry's that I'm aware of. But at every point of interaction with the company, you get this stuff. Here is their statement of mission, which is basically a reformulation of the classic triple bottom line. The triple bottom line is the idea that you don't measure a company's performance only by the financial numbers. You also measure it by its contribution to social equity and better environment. And Ben & Jerry's scores very, very highly on that. And it says here, central to the mission of Ben & Jerry's is the belief that all 3 parts must thrive equally in a manner that commands deep respect for individuals in and outside the company and supports the communities of which they are a part. So, part 1 there is to produce a great ice cream, part 2 is to make money at it, and part 3 is the social and environmental quality of life questions. And again, this company is just very congruent. No matter where you slice your interaction with it, you're going to run into this stuff. Here, for example, they're talking about the partnerships they have with social service agencies to operate ice cream scoop shops that employ people with disabilities. They also subcontract their baking of brownies to a company called Grayston Bakery in Yonkers, New York. Grayston hires unemployables. A lot of the people in their workforce have a history of, say, substance abuse or prison or mental illness. They're not going to have an easy time finding traditional jobs. And Grayston's slogan is, we don't, let me see if I can get this right. We don't hire people to bake brownies. We bake brownies to hire people. I think that's it. Okay, and continuing with Ben & Jerry's, we see that they have on their website a little mini interview with one of their cocoa farmers, a fair trade grower. Now, for anybody who has followed the chocolate industry, fair trade in cocoa is a huge, huge deal because an alarming percentage of mainstream cocoa is farmed with child slave labor in places like the Ivory Coast and Ghana. So here we have an Ivory Coast farmer who is fair trade and who is guaranteeing, therefore, that child slaves are not used. And I know I switched to buying only fair trade cocoa products when I found out about this several years ago. And at that point, it was a little bit challenging to find good chocolate that met my criteria. Now it's become much easier. There are many, many brands. And even some of the larger brands are moving in this direction, in part because there's been enormous consumer pressure. In fact, Corporate Accountability International, I think it is currently waging a campaign, or maybe it's Green America, a campaign against Hershey's right now to try to get them to shift more toward fair trade. So by doing the fair trade route, Ben & Jerry's, first of all, is immunizing themselves from the consumer protests and boycotts that some of these larger companies are facing. And two, they're doing the right thing. And three, they are on their website, in their packaging, educating people about why this is important. Okay, here we have another food company example. This is Familia, a Swiss company. Interestingly enough, I was on my way to Switzerland, and I stopped in New York overnight at my in-laws and in Queens. And my father-in-law is a big fan of Familia cereal, and I noticed that they had changed their packaging to really reflect a commitment to environmental stewardship. And I took a picture of this and actually threw it into my slideshow at the last minute on the speech I gave in Switzerland, saying, here's an example from right here in Switzerland. But what's interesting here, and this is obviously not a PR photo or it wouldn't have that big, shiny, icky reflection. This was something I did quickly with my Pocket Digital. And they didn't use the word organic on this packaging, and I wondered at the time why. And about a year later, I noticed that they had, in fact, started talking about organic, because they were talking here on this packaging about growing without pesticides and natural methods. And so I'm thinking to myself, why are they not saying organic? So I guess somebody must have asked them the same question because they switched, and now they do. Okay, so I am throwing a lot of information out here. So, Jerry, do you want to see if anybody has any questions?
Terrific. So in the low market brands, I can't remember
Obviously,
where.
it's going to differ a little from store to store, but my experience is it's right around the same price. And
So,
it's way
wow.
cheaper. It's way cheaper than the premium brands.
And the premium brands are primarily the ones that are doing pushing social responsibility, like seventh
Yes
generation.
and no, and you have seventh generation in that category, but you also have, say, Quilted Northern, which is just pushing a much thicker paper. So it's when I say premium, I'm not only talking about the environmentally responsible premium brands, of which there are quite a number. And but yeah, they're much cheaper than any other recycled paper I'm aware of, and they are comparable with the supermarket brands in their pricing. Yeah, depending on where you're buying, it might be 10 or 15 or 25 cents up or down. But by and large, their pricing structure is competitive, and if recycled paper is an issue for you, this is a way you can do it without really feeling any pain in your pocket.
I think that's terrific. I really wasn't aware of it until you used it as a case study, and I do track these things fairly closely. So Ben & Jerry, I used to teach social enterprise and used to, of course, use them as an example. And one of the things that I liked about them is that they didn't let the big boys push them around. So
no, in fact, they went straight to their market. This is another very great thing they did. When Haagen-Dazs was trying to squeeze them out of supermarkets, at that time Haagen-Dazs was owned by Pillsbury. So they started a campaign on their packaging, among other places, what is the doughboy afraid of?
Right.
And basically embarrassing Haagen-Dazs into letting them not be hassled off the supermarkets.
Yeah, they weren't getting shelf space distribution because Pillsbury was, sort of banging on its chest and saying, "Don't let the little guy in."
Back. And these two little guys in a garage in Vermont. And we should point out, in all fairness, that Ben & Jerry's was bought out by Unilever, so it is now part of a big corporate conglomerate, but their buy and sell maintain their autonomy. In fact, I have a friend who is on their board, and they continue to be a very socially driven, environmentally driven company. Unilever really hasn't constrained them very much at all. They really are acting autonomously.
Yeah, so and again, it's one of the trends that I also follow, which I think is fascinating, that large conglomerates are now buying socially responsible smaller companies because they need to learn how to do it from them. So,
yes.
So
I believe
Unilever
Clorox owns Burt's Bees, for example. And then the very interesting company is Hain Celestial, which, unlike most of the big corporate giants that have swallowed the green brands, Hain Celestial was originally a collection of little green brands that joined together in mergers, as opposed to more the acquisition style. So you had Hain, which was making things like peanut butter and mayonnaise. Celestial Seasonings, of course, was a tea company. They own Barbara's, which does baked goods. They own, I think, some health care lines of personal care products, shampoo companies, and that sort of thing. They own, 20, 30 companies in that space now. But you also do see Clorox buying Burt's Bees, and you see a number of other smaller companies being bought out either for their social responsibility or their environmental awareness or just their skills at reaching this market. What's that? Tweezerman is another example. I think they got bought out by one of the big companies.
Tweezerman, I don't know. Honest Tea was bought out.
Yeah.
And I can't think of, there's a long list.
Oh, yeah, beverage companies have been very active acquirers. So a lot of the natural beverage brands are owned by somebody big these days.
And I think, again, with Ben & Jerry, they're paving the way, teaching other companies that get bought out how they should be working in a corporate environment. So they are, sort of pushing the envelope by keeping their autonomy, which is not everybody is.
You can write into your buy-sell, and there are things Ben & Jerry's could. I think there are people in Ben & Jerry's who would have liked to take that even farther than they did, and if they're now advising other companies on how to do this. Very, very interesting times we live in.
I totally agree. So we have a quiet group today, and I guess it's just my questions or our chit-chat back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I am going to throw in one more factor. Speaking of big corporations, there is a very well-known retailer that I do not shop at, but that has done a huge amount to make things greener in a very mainstream way, and that, of course, is Walmart. I have major issues with Walmart on 6 or 7 different major policy questions, such as labor relations and host community relations and a lot of other stuff. But I am, quite frankly, delighted that they are, for example, lowering their energy use by orders of magnitude. They are bringing organic food to a huge audience that will never, ever set foot in a Whole Foods. Incidentally, Whole Foods is another one that rolls up companies. My mom used to live in Montclair, New Jersey, and her local health food store was called Fresh Fields. Whole Foods bought that chain. They came over here. We had a company called Bread and Circus, which had mostly in the Boston area and in the store out here. They bought that, and they bought Wild Oats. And so now basically most of the larger scale health food supermarkets in the country are owned by Whole Foods, but that was an acquisition strategy that they went after. But Walmart, people say, how can you praise Walmart for selling organic milk? And I'm delighted because the people they're selling organic milk to are not Whole Foods demographic, and they didn't know about this, and now they do, and it's going to actually have more impact than what Whole Foods does. I still shop there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought Walmart up as an example because they had a reputational issue, and certainly within the labor relations area, they were known for hiring part-timers and not paying benefits. And
right, and forcing the U.S. taxpayers to pick up the tab for the health care they weren't paying, basically.
Right, and there was a big kickback from consumers, and they just stopped buying from Walmart. Their bottom line started to show it, and they realized that they couldn't correct their image they wouldn't be taken so seriously if they try to do something in labor relations, and that's why they went first for sustainability issues.
Right, and
and
Walmart
they are,
is,
yeah,
go ahead.
and they are improving their labor relations along the way as well.
Yeah, and eventually they may get to the point where I'm willing to shop there. So far, I'm still not. But the other really interesting thing, Walmart makes a case for business sustainability that we super green folks can't make, because you get a company like Ben & Jerry's, and it's totally tree huggers. Tree huggers don't work at Walmart. Profit-oriented, single bottom-line driven individuals have pushed Walmart to a sustainability strategy because they are making and saving enormous amounts of money. So I want to say that again. Walmart makes the business case for sustainability because it shows that sustainability is extremely profitable if you go about it the right way.
And you can do it for a downscale audience as opposed to an upscale audience, which is another point that they make.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. There are people who really can't afford to shop anywhere else, and they're able to shop at Walmart. And we do have to remember that Walmart provided a big service to very small communities that were underserved by retail giants and that were really at the mercy of a price-insensitive situation with small businesses that may or may not have been treating them well. They have had a very negative impact on the economy in terms of the number of local stores that have closed. There's a very complex issues. But like I have a client actually who goes around giving speeches about how to survive and thrive being next to a Walmart, which he is. He runs a pet store, and his flagship store shares a parking lot with a Walmart.
How cool. He's figured out a strategy of differentiation for standing out.
And he says, he says things like, yes, you can buy a fish tank from Walmart at this amount of money, but, don't come to me when your fish die in that fish tank.
Right.
So yeah, he's showing the quality, the differentiation of product selection, the knowledgeable staff that he has. He's got a number of places where he differentiates. And certainly many, many other stores have been able to manage when a big chain comes in. But many more have not. We have a very different economy than we did 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on. When you create your messaging, there are certain trigger points that you're going to be wanting to be talking about. You may not want to be talking about all of them in any particular ad or marketing message, but these are things you want to consider, such as the environment, of course, but also ethics, caring, social justice, and outreach to different sub-communities, which could be ethnic, or it could be, for example, two subcultures that have nothing to do with ethnicity. One would be lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and the other would be deaf community. They both go across all ethnic and racial boundaries, but they're very much a subculture, and you market to them as you would market to any ethnic subculture. So for the environment, here are some kinds of messages that resonate with people. 80% of our energy is renewable. That's a very popular thing. And obviously, the numbers, you should use your real numbers. I am throwing out all the numbers in these talking points are just examples. And I am a very, very big believer in truth in marketing. Zero waste is going to be an increasingly hot topic over the next decade or so. This is one of, along with, I think, water resources, this is one of the sleepers in the environmental movement that is going to raise its head and become a dragon. And if you're not addressing these things, you will be in trouble. So start now.
So it's interesting because you brought up Walmart as the example, and that's one of the things that Walmart is pushing its vendors on is to be reducing the waste from their packaging.
Yeah, and well, they should. Whoever invented the blister pack did a terrible disservice to the environment. Plus, I as a consumer, find them very frustrating because I can't ever get them open without slashing them up.
Yeah, I agree.
You all know now whose slogan that is on the bottom there. That's obviously Markel. Okay, on the ethics side, you can take it from the corny, hallmarky, mom taught us to treat us right, on up to we live here and we're accountable. And this is a big point of differentiation between a locally owned business and a chain store. To go back to Walmart, when you shop at a Walmart, a significant chunk of your money goes out to Bentonville, Arkansas, and then from there to the stockholders. And if you don't happen to live in Bentonville, Arkansas, it is not your local community that's being supported. Whereas if you buy from your local hardware store, much more of that money stays in the community and comes back in the form of, oh, can you sponsor our Little League team, or can you give us a place to meet, or whatever. Okay. On caring, you can certainly tie into a larger cause like hunger or one of choose your disease of the month. This third bullet is a very interesting one because this is something one of my local community banks actually started doing about, I guess it must be 10 years now. They decided that they were going to let all of their account holders vote on a $50,000 pool of money that they were going to distribute to charities. So what happened? Well, if you didn't already bank at Florence Savings Bank and you had your kid in a school that was one of the contenders, or you supported a charity that was one of the contenders, what did you do? You took some bucks out of someplace else and you went down to Florence Savings Bank and opened an account so you could vote. How's that for a win-win?
That's great.
Okay, listening is a part of it too. We live in a culture where it is no longer possible for companies to ignore their constituents, and their constituents are customers, and including customers who feel that they've been done wrong. There is a big, big difference between, in the 1980s, Tom Paxton, the folk singer, had a song called Thank You, Republic Airlines, and the first two lines were, "Thank you, Republic Airlines, for breaking the neck on my guitar." And it was a satirical song about how badly they treated his luggage. Well, that song, if you bought his album, you heard it. If you heard him in concert, you heard it. I don't think I ever heard it on the radio. There was no such thing as YouTube back then. Compare that now to United Breaks Guitars, the YouTube video. Another musician, another damaged guitar. 11 million people have seen that. 11 million people saw one guy complaining about how he was badly treated by an airline. What does that do to the airline's brand? So you have to listen. This particular website, which is called, read it. DoTheRightThing.com. That's a place where customers can go and leave messages for companies. How well they listen and respond, I don't know. Here on this page we see that that Starbucks is getting a suggestion here. Starbucks strikes me as a company that's probably fairly good at listening. Other companies may or may not. But if you're not listening, you're in trouble. You're going to be the victim of 11 million people seeing a viral video about what a craphead you are, and that's not what you want. So you definitely want to have mechanisms in place for monitoring social media. I think Comcast is a really interesting example here because Comcast was a company that was, shall we say charitably, not well known for its customer service a few years ago.
I remember that.
Yes, and in fact there was another viral video that went very, very public of the Comcast repairman being kept on hold so long when he called corporate to try to get an answer that he fell asleep on a customer's couch. Not good for your brand. In fact, really bad for your brand. So what did they do? They hired a guy named Frank Eliason who set up a Twitter account called Comcast Cares. He is no longer running that account. He's gone on to be a speaker on customer service and such, but they still maintain the account. And so now if you're having trouble, you send a tweet out to that Twitter account, Comcast Cares. You send them an @ message, and you say, hey, what's going on here? And they'll say, oh, have you tried this with your modem? Or we've got a repairman on his way. It's a very, very responsive platform for them. So again, they really took it to heart. I think that they were being justifiably beaten up for not being very good with customer service. And now they've really incorporated social media into their customer service. And any company that is not seeing customer service as part of marketing, you're making a huge mistake. Customer service is your most important part of marketing. It trumps your logo, your slogan, your ads, all the rest of it, because really what your brand is the customer's perception of what it's like to do business with you. I will say that again, because this is really important. Your brand is the customer's perception of what it is like to work with you, of which your slogan, logo, colors, etc. are a piece, but it's by no means the most important piece. If you say we're a responsive company with empowered employees, and then somebody calls you and they're on hold for 35 minutes and have to go through 14 voice menu options, and then they finally get somebody who says, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do anything about that, it's policy. Do you think they're going to believe you when you say you're a customer-focused and empowered employees? Do you think they're going to tell their friends, this company is crap, it doesn't live up to its promises, I'm never doing business again? Do you think it's going to put up a viral video on YouTube and get millions of people to see you falling down on the job? If you're not doing this stuff, you're in trouble, but you can change.
So can you repeat that statement again, Dana is asking?
Repeat the statement about brand. Okay. That your real brand is the customer or the prospect's perception of what it is like to do business with you. And that perception is based on real experiences of that customer or prospect and all their friends and people they know online, as well as in the marketing messages you are putting out. Okay, so some points about justice. We all know what's happened with the financial meltdown, and Green America did a wonderful campaign on switching to local banks. Local banks have some real marketing points that Bank of America's and Chase's and Citibanks of this world do not have. Redlining is the idea. This was something that there was a lot of community organizing in the 1970s, that banks basically write off areas where poor people live and say, we're not going to loan there. So a bank that says we're committed not to do that, that's something you pay attention to if you're shopping for a bank. Creating alternatives to poverty with the profits. Here's the Ben & Jerry's Grayston Bakery thing about jobs and job training to people who are basically unemployable. Employee ownership can be a good hot button. And again, these are just a few among many, many possibilities. I work with companies all the time to help them refine what are their advantages, what can their talking points be. So here's another very well-known company, another one started by an upstart hippie out of, I think, her kitchen sink, Dame Anita Roddick and the Body Shop, a British-based company. Here is right there at the beginning of their website. You see everything about them is values-driven. They're really, really talking about it, and again, they walk their talk. They were very early in opposing animal testing in the cosmetics industry, very early in doing in-store campaigns to support various charities in the producer countries where their raw ingredients are grown. Very nice and very successful company to learn from. For ethnic and subculture, obviously, if you are owned and operated by someone in the subculture you're marketing to, you've got a huge advantage. If you're making special accommodations for people with different cultural needs, you're welcome, Dana. The third one here, I'm going to ask the listeners here if anybody knows what this is code for. We are welcoming business that embraces the diversity of our customers and employees. Does that ring any bells for anybody?
I think it's a quiet group today.
I guess so. All right. Well, basically, this is code for we're a gay and lesbian-friendly business. But it's a way of saying it in which the right-wing Christian fundamentalist attackers of that point of view, it's going to slip under their radar. Churches often use this kind of language, around here at least. This is a very welcoming community. All right, I'll give people another chance to pick my brain here.
Okay, so while we're waiting for people to write in, good, Dana's typing in. I'm just going to sort of make a comment that I think it's really interesting that American Express, I don't think that they're pushing it as being socially responsible, but what they're doing for Small Business Saturday, I think is showing social responsibility in that they actually gave a $25 credit to businesses that use their American Express to shop at a small business on this Saturday after Thanksgiving. And I know I took advantage of it.
I actually saw some of those promotions, and they were very nicely done. Dana is asking if there's any examples of Canadian leaders in this area. One that jumps to mind is the cereal company Nature's Path. I think the very first issue of my Principled Profit newsletter, which is now called Green and Profitable, now called Clean and Green. Clean and Profitable is the column. Profiled Nature's Path, and this is a company that does a lot of organic foods and supports sustainable farmers and uses its packaging less so than it used to, but in the old days, if you opened up their box, the entire inside of the box was all about the sustainability piece and why it's important to do organic, and I think they probably figured out that not enough people rip open the cereal boxes after they're done with the cereal, and that printing on the inside of the box was not really an effective way to do it. But still, I think that's a very, very good company that has done very nice things on sustainability, and it has, I guess, international distribution because they're based in BC, and I buy their stuff in Massachusetts. See if I can think of anybody else in Canada. Off the top of my head, that's the one that comes to mind.
Actually, I'm going to say he's the guy, he went to Princeton, dropped out. Is it TerraCycle? He's Canadian, although the company, yeah, I think he is Canadian, although the company is U.S.-based, and I can't think of is it Tom Swazi?
I don't know his name, but TerraCycle is another very interesting company because basically they take other people's old discarded packaging and make stuff out of it. And so it's taking recycling to a new level because it's actually recycling by brand. You take, I think, for example, Frito-Lay potato chip packaging. You can recycle. They make it into something else, and other kinds of potato chip packaging they don't. So,
absolutely, yeah. They're a very interesting company, and they sort of morphed over time. So they started actually as, and I think they still have it as part of their business, but they make much more money on the recycling, which is sponsored by corporations. But they used earthworms to convert trash into, back into fertilizer, and then they sold the fertilizer in recycled bottles.
Yeah, I know Cliff Bar is another product whose packaging they recycle. And it's really interesting. It's something I don't think anybody else is doing, this brand-specific recycling. And, of course, for the corporations, it is in their interest hugely to reduce their waste stream and also the waste stream of their products on the post-consumer end. Because, as we mentioned earlier, that is going to be a growing issue over the next few years, and the smart leaders are really thinking about that now. Alrighty. So this is a campaign that I had deep personal involvement with, Save the Mountain. Back in November 1999, I was reading my local paper, and, oh my goodness, a front page story that a developer wanted to put 40 McMansions on the mountain 2 miles from my house, and immediately abutting the state park that always won the newspaper reader poll on best place to take an out-of-town visitor, because from the top there you could see into Vermont and New Hampshire and Connecticut. So you're on this mountaintop. It's in the West they would laugh when I call it a mountain. It's all of 900 feet, but we call it a mountain. And you get this 4-state view here, and with all the way across Massachusetts, north and south, into the next states. And the thing that really got me going was fairly late in the article when they interviewed various environmentalists and civic activists who all came back with variations on, oh, this is terrible, but there's nothing we can do. Well, I'm the sort of person that's like waving the red cape in front of the bull. What do you mean there's nothing we can do? So that article appeared on a Friday, and by Tuesday, I had announced the formation of a group called Save the Mountain and set a meeting time and place, the place being my house, the time being about 2 weeks down the road. And I got out a press release, a flyer, a web page, and started organizing and expected that 25 people would come to the meeting and 5 of them would be willing to do some real work and that we would drag this out and make it so expensive and uncomfortable for the developer that in about 5 years he would give up. Well, 70 people showed up in my house, and I don't live in a McMansion. So we had people sitting, it was a warm night, the stove was not on, which was good because we had people sitting on the wood stove. We had people sitting on the bay window. We had stacked the 2 tables that we had in that room to make more room. Going to the bathroom was about a 10-minute operation, picking your way 1 foot at a time so as not to step on anybody. The fire marshal could have easily come in and closed us down that night, but fortunately he didn't. We had another 30 people call that day or the day before saying, I really am interested in this issue. I can't come to the meeting. Please keep me in the loop. So we were off to a very, very strong start. We ended up with about 35 people actually willing to do the work. We had a zillion subcommittees working on endangered species and flooding and every issue you could think of that was going to make it difficult to build this project. And this was, it turned out, only a 13-month campaign. And by several points in the process, we won major victories. First, the developer scaled it down from 40 to 32, and then from 32 all the way down to 12. And then our legal team and the state collaborated to actually buy the land out from under the developer and preserve it and add it to the state park. So we had basically I had always said privately, if anybody asked me, well, what do you think they should really be allowed to build? And I said 2 houses at the bottom. I never said this publicly, but lo and behold, that's what happened, is they got to build 2 houses at the bottom. And the rest of the land is either underwater, literally, and therefore didn't need protection, or was bought by the state and added to the state park. So we had this enormous victory. We had thousands of people involved in it. Now, I should tell you, I live in a village of about 200 people within a town of 5,000, within a county of about 150,000. We had thousands of people involved, at least on the level of signing a petition or slapping a bumper sticker or a lawn sign up. So we had enormous support. This was 1999 and 2000, and you'd drive around my town and you'd see a lawn that said Gore and Save the Mountain. And then you'd go around the corner and there'd actually be one that said Bush and Save the Mountain. And then you'd go on the next block and there'd even be one that said Nader and Save the Mountain. Everybody was in favor of what we were doing. It was basically a near consensus in the town. There were literally about 10 people that didn't support what we were doing in the whole town. And we were using everything that I knew about marketing and community organizing. And that is part of why I think we were successful, was that we treated this very early as a marketing challenge. And we got, I kid you not, more than 70 stories in the press, including one in the Boston Globe, which is the big regional newspaper 2 hours away, and lots in the local press. We got a couple of dozen broadcasts. We had, this is all the way back in 1999 and 2000, we were actually using social media. We set up a group on what is called e-groups, which later became part of Yahoo groups. And we had 2 lists. We had one for the core organizers where we would talk deep strategy, and then a public list where we would keep people informed. And so on every level, on the internet, in the press, in tabling in public places. At one point, the developer and his wife were walking through one of the local farmers markets, and there were our people there gathering signatures and holding signs. And she turned to them and said, "You people are everywhere." Yep, we were.
Good for you guys. That's an incredible story.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It's really nice when you have victories. And the reason I think we had victories is because we were able to really present this as a mom and apple pie issue. You know, this was the place, the mountain where, as you're driving up the Connecticut River along I-91 from New York and New Haven and Hartford, and you get to the point where you see that landscape, our mountain on our side of the river and then Mount Tom on the other side, you think, I'm home. And it was not something that people were willing to let be messed with. We actually passed several pieces of legislation in our town that not only did we save that particular bit of 105 acres, but we basically made it impossible for anybody in the future to do anything similar to desecrate this mountain. So, for example, it's now illegal to build in our town above 350 feet in altitude without a special permit. as one of, I think, 3 different pieces of legislation we passed. And we were routinely able to bring out 400 people to public hearings. Again, this is a town of 5,000.
Very extraordinary.
Yeah, it was very exciting. And that's really, actually, that campaign was what got me to braid together the 2 pieces of my life, the activist and the marketer. And to decide that green marketing was a place where I wanted to focus my energies. It was really the success of Save the Mountain that made me think that I could be looking at a bigger canvas in my professional work as well.
I think that's a perfect example of bringing your personal passion into your profession and making it a business, which is perfect.
Now, what we're looking at here is actually the view of my garage and the farm that I live on, and behind the farm is Mount Holyoke, and next to the mountain out of this picture, you can't actually see it from my land, is the mountain they wanted to build on. And up at the top left is the Summit House, which is not visible in the picture, but which is where it was a hotel in like the 1840s. And it's just, again, it's the place that everybody takes their out-of-town visitors so they can see the view. And as you can see on this foggy morning, it's a strikingly beautiful landscape that if you're looking from the top down, you see. So this is what we protected. And, I've already talked about most of this. Direct mail. We actually did some direct mail. And interestingly enough, the fundraising piece was very interesting with this. I think we sent out 1 letter asking for money, but mostly money just came to us. It was another lesson, and this was not something I was really involved in as part of, but this campaign taught me to think from a position of abundance. The attitude of the people on legal and fundraising committees was that we spend what we need and the money will come to us. And it did. And in fact, one of the most interesting things was that the newspaper did a big profile on the developer in which he crammed his foot into his mouth over and over again. And we named him honorary chair of our fundraising department after that because in the next 7 days after that article, we got $1,000 in small checks.
So was it mostly individual donations, or did you have any small businesses also contributing?
We had a few small businesses, but typically, like there was more donations of services. I obviously donated a huge amount of publicity, copywriting, and consulting. We had a guy who owned a local winemaking supply store who did some giving to us. A database genius who works with databases professionally set up some structures for us. We actually, our webmaster was 15 years old at the time, but she had a little business doing websites. So yeah, we definitely had some involvement in the business community. And,
let me ask it in a different way. If this were to happen now, we're living in a more socially responsible world. Would it be appropriate for a socially responsible small business to get behind a cause such as Save the Mountain?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think the businesses that did get behind, some of them definitely saw some benefit to that participation. And I'm a big believer in cause-related marketing, and you can do this for lots and lots of causes, and it should be something that's related to your brand. I mean, I never quite understood the connection with Ford and Susan G. Komen. It makes more sense to me to have, like, Ben & Jerry's working with the scoop shops and providing jobs that are related to ice cream. So try to find something a cause that really makes sense for your mission statement. And there was, I should mention, the upshot of this. So the reason why we won in just 13 months instead of the 5 years I thought it would take is that the marketing we did attracted the attention of a local philanthropist. And she actually bought the land for the state.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had most of the contributions directly to Save the Mountain were typically in the $1 to $100 range, maybe a couple of $200. No big, huge rollouts, no 4-figure contributions. But because of what we do, this woman wrote a check for $400,000 to the state of Massachusetts, which gave us near total victory. So interestingly enough, again, from the abundance mentality, our prosperity was not necessary to the success of the campaign. We did not have to get that $400,000 and give it to the state. It never passed through us. we were able to accomplish the goal without even touching that money. But we had some fairly extensive lawyer bills in figuring out how to make that transaction happen and how to use eminent domain and to basically get around the buy-sell agreement that the developer had with the landowner, who was actually delighted to work with us instead of him. And so there was a lot going on, but I think, seeing money as not an end in itself, but as a lever for accomplishing things, and that it's only one way, that getting the state to buy the land and getting it funded turned out to be a winning proposition, but we did not have to raise that money. Okay, so some of the message points we used were habitat, endangerment, and traffic. The rural character of the neighborhood, you saw the picture of where I live. This is not a neighborhood that really could have supported that density of population. Water was a huge issue, both in terms of runoff and flooding, in terms of water quality. Strain on town services was a big one. And the big point that we had is, remember those people at the beginning that said, oh, this is terrible, there's nothing we can do? The big challenge we had, what really we won very quickly when we got this message across, is yes, there's something we can do. We have the power. We do not have to accept this. That was the biggest single shift that we had to make. And incidentally, we won the campaign in December 2000, and in April of 2001, we now had this empowered citizenry. We had been governed by a three-man select board from a very Neanderthal point of view, and we passed in town meeting, I guess it must have been that March, we upped the composition of the select board from 3 people to 5, and then a month later we had an election, and we were able to get a whole slate of progressives in there. And so the whole town governance structure shifted as a result of this amazing campaign. So we had the land acquisition, we had the new laws, and we had the empowered residents, and we had this basically complete victory in just over a year. So, my goodness, we have 4 minutes, and I'm supposed to do this slide that's a 3-hour seminar. I think I'll just...
Oh, my!
I usually spend about 10 minutes on this slide. I think I'm just not going to go there. We'll have to do another session on that.
Terrific.
I do want to quickly touch on partnership and alliance marketing, because this is something I'm a big believer in. One of the reasons that Save the Mountain was successful, one of the reasons that Markel was successful, is because looking around at who we can partner with to make this happen, we don't have to do it all ourselves. So, for example, my book, Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green, there were partnerships all over the place. First of all, once John Wiley & Sons, the publisher, accepted my proposal, I asked them, well, how would you feel if I brought in Jay Levinson, the Guerrilla Marketing Man, as a co-author? And they're like, wow, you mean we can have 2 marketing gurus for one book? Yeah, we like it. Go ask him. So I asked him, and he said, yes, he'd be delighted. He has since made it somewhat harder to partner with him, but in 2009, when I approached him, it was still quite possible. And that gave me the benefit of his enormous brand, the biggest name in marketing, as well as the 84,000 people then on his mailing list, which has since grown. Having him on board made it very easy to get Stephen M.R. Covey to do the forward, the author of The Speed of Trust and the son of the 7 Habits guy. It made it easy to get a charity partner for the launch, which we used Green America, which was, again, remember what I said about cause-related marketing, reinforcing your message. Well, Green America is absolutely about what the book is about, building sustainable small businesses who are green aware and community friendly. So it was a great partnership there. And they had 94,000 people on their list that got to hear about the book. We had a lot of bloggers and newsletter editors promoting the book. And then Wiley actually did an Earth Day promotion with Amazon in which they made the book ridiculously cheap for a little while around Earth Day 2010, during which time it got to be #1 in its category in both April and May that year. So, and it has actually continued to be on the environmental category bestseller list at least 22 times in the 24 months that since it came out. There are 2 months that didn't happen to catch it doing that, and I don't know if it did. Okay, so now I have on my own mailing list about 10,000 people. If you count I can reach about 15,000 people through my social media connections. My goal in the book proposal, 5 million people. I actually stated that in the book proposal. Well, 3 weeks after the launch, I did an exact match Google search for these 4 words in a row, guerrilla marketing goes green. And oh my goodness, there was 1,070,000 hits. I've never done anything on Google. And that still leaves 1 million real websites. And if they average just 5 people viewing them apiece, I made my 5 million goal. How cool is that?
Wow.
Yeah. So this is, I know you're making the slides available to people, so I'm not going to go into this, but basically these are sources for getting free publicity. These are places that send you several times a day who is looking for stories on what subjects, and you write to those reporters and say, you want to talk to me because, as I said, we're only just barely scratching the surface. I do want to mention that anybody who buys Guerrilla Marketing Goes Green, no matter where you buy it from, whether you go to greenandprofitable.com, which is my site, of course you can get it autographed, or whether you get it from Amazon, or whether you get it from your local bookseller, which is actually where I'd love to see you get it. Go to guerrillamarketinggoesgreen.com, and under the Buy the Book menu, there's you can sign up for $2,000 worth of cool special reports and consultations and other nifty stuff that my marketing partners gave me to share with you. And I also, this is another one of my books, Grassroots Marketing, Getting Noticed in a Noisy World. I see Dana, our very active listener, is asking about B corporations. I think they're a great idea. I have not really researched too much on the details, but I'm thrilled with using an alternate corporate structure that really focuses on social responsibility rather than bottom line profit to stockholders.
And I'll just chime in. In some states, I think it may be up to about 10 states, it's actually a legal form, so it's not just certification anymore.
Cool. You can get copies from Ventureneer, or you can get copies from me of the slides. Either way. And this is how to get in touch with me, Shell with 1 L at greenandprofitable.com. Twitter is my name, SHELHOROWITZ. And then something to make the lawyers happy, and there we go. And only 2 minutes behind schedule.
Terrific. Well, I want to really thank you for a wonderful, wonderful presentation, really rich in detail and background on, those people that are already doing socially responsible marketing and making the case for people who have socially responsible products to getting out there and, letting people know about it. I think that's a great story about Marcal. I didn't, one that I didn't know, and certainly I did know the Ben and Jerry one, but I love learning stories about people I don't know or companies that I don't know.
Sure. And, of course, being the marketing slut that I am, I have to ask you, if you would put those nice things you just said in writing, and I'll give you a link to my website and put it up there as one of my testimonials.
Oh, I would love to do that. Terrific. Excellent. I love that.
See how easy this stuff is?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I will absolutely send you a recommendation, and I'll put it even on LinkedIn for you, which is one of my favorite places to be promoting things. So again, thank you everybody for attending. We've got really a chock-filled December. We've got content marketing increases leads and sales at 2 o'clock today. Make Your Business the One That Gets Lucky. It's a new book that's coming out, and that's going to be, I think it's Wednesday or Thursday, I'm not sure. Next week we're doing branding. and then protecting your brand through trademarks and copyrights. Of course, we're going to take a pause for the Christmas holiday and then be back in 2012 with time management, 100 free ways to market your idea. We have Peter Shankman of helpareporter.com, which is a resource that which is a resource that Shell has back on one, I guess 2 slides prior to this slide. And he's going to be talking about mobile marketing, so the revolution of that's going on in your pocket. And I know I've been slow to take advantage of mobile, but it's coming, and it's coming in a big, big, big way. We're also going to have a webinar on making sure your clients pay you. So unfortunately, a friend just told me about somebody not paying her, and knowing ways to ensure it is really, really important. So again, thank you, Shel, for really a great presentation, really meaty and deep, and everybody else for tuning in. And Shel, I will follow up with you separately.
Great. All righty. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to be turning off the presentation momentarily.
Okay. Give me 30 seconds to respond to Dana by chat.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Okay.